Well, welcome back again to another analysis behind the news. You know, a lot of us rejoice the cheaper gas at the gas stations, but it does have ramifications. One ramification, for instance, is the ability for the federal government to lie again to the citizens that there is no inflation. And based on that one thing alone, pretty much, they have denied Social Security recipients a raise in Social Security. Perhaps they go to different grocery stores than all of the American people. Perhaps they buy different cars. Perhaps they do a lot of things different from the average citizen on the flyover zone, so to speak. Because inflation is a big thing, and inflation is a minimum, absolute rock bottom minimum of 10% a year. In some things, it's as much as 20%. But because of the price of gas, the citizens who are on Social Security are being denied another raise in their Social Security payments. Now, how this works is this. The law says that the increments of increase in Social Security will be tied to inflation. But you see, when you're living on that and that alone, and you're a principled individual and you just squeak by month by month by month, there comes a time when you can't squeak by anymore because of inflation, perhaps a medical problem, whatever. And so when you didn't want food stamps before because that to you was a moral principle that I should not be on the government dole, you don't feel like you're on the government dole taking Social Security because that's something you paid for. But taking food stamps, that's different. I didn't pay for that. That means I'm on welfare, so to speak. So a lot of people don't do that. But as inflation goes up, but Social Security remains a little bit behind in its increase, then they have a tough time making it month after month after month. So there will be more and more people lining up to get that food stamp and take it to the grocery store, amongst other things. And so they become more and more a ward of the state. The elderly become beholden to the state. The elderly become a voting bloc to vote for people that are going to give them more, whether it's Social Security, food stamps, or whatever. It is a scheme that was instituted by the fascist government of Franklin Roosevelt. And it is fascism, and anybody that can study Franklin Roosevelt's program versus Mussolini's knows that the two were very compatible, very close. In fact, we published articles years ago showing that Roosevelt actually plagiarized the speeches of Mussolini when he was addressing the American people about certain things like minimum wage and that sort of thing. So at any rate, we see that happening in the area of a lesser price of oil. There's another thing happening in that regard. Let's keep in mind that the federal government does not want the American people to be independent with energy. They do not want that. That's the only thing that makes sense in all of their actions. You know, a lot of people think it's ignorance, it's this, that, or the other thing. But the common denominator in the bottom line is that the federal government, whether it's Obama or whoever it is, does not want the American people to be independent in energy and free from international entanglements as a result. Now, one of the things that is poised to happen in the next quarter and two, because of the lower price of oil, is the bankruptcy of many, many, hundreds, as a matter of fact, oil companies. That is a reality. But riding to the rescue comes China. According to the Chinese press, Chinese companies now will be investing in American oil companies, particularly in West Texas. And so you saw the big climb of oil in Texas and North Dakota and everything else. And all of a sudden, with the decline in price, that arch is heading back down. And it manifests itself in so many different ways that I'm not going to get into right now. But you see it when you go to places like Midland and Odessa, Texas, and that sort of thing. What's happening is those Chinese companies, those Chinese investors will start to own American oil. because American oil is in trouble. It can't subsist on less than $50 a gallon. That's simple. So all of this forced price reduction in oil has a lot of different ramifications across the economic board. And we're going to be seeing some real tough times as a result, until it gets to the point where the Chinese have taken over and that sort of thing, and then the price will come back up again and everybody will be happy. We see another thing happening in Congress. Ryan sets conditions for running. In other words, make me dictator of the House of Representatives and I'll be happy to do that. Proclaim me king, whatever. And of course, they all promise various things in regard to getting someone's vote to vote for Ryan as the Speaker of the House. But ladies and gentlemen, we remind you of the old story of Brer Rabbit. Oh, I don't want to be thrown into the briar patch. Excuse me. Please don't throw me in the briar patch, which is exactly where Brer Rabbit wanted to be thrown. And he was trying to get away from Brer Bear and Brer Coyote and that sort of thing. You know the story, for those of you old enough to have seen the Walt Disney film Song of the South. At any rate, Ryan is, oh, please don't make me Speaker of the House. Oh, please don't do this. But now, okay, if you do it under certain conditions, I'll comply. But Ryan is part of the leadership that they got rid of. And now they're even going to impose stricter rules than what they had before. Now, they say they're not going to, and they're fudging a little here and there, but if you look at the verbiage, it's not ironclad. And I think that people will see that this Aspen Institute-trained Ryan is going to be more of a RINO than they realized. Be as that may be. I'm very happy to announce that Planned Parenthood is no longer going to sell fetal tissue. Now they're going to give it away. Now, please explain to me the morality involved in this. They are killing babies to sell fetal tissue, but now they're going to kill babies and give the fetal tissue away for nothing. Now, question, is there more of a demand when you have to pay for it or when you get it for free? Are there going to be more murders of babies for fetal tissue or less? That kind of thinking to me is, I can't even describe it in words. How on earth can these people deal with this in their conscience? The answer is pretty simple. They must not have a conscience. Otherwise, they'd be alcoholics and everything else. They couldn't take it. But we're dealing with some very, very amoral people. And morality is our biggest problem in this country. Another thing to ponder for a moment is the free trade deals. They're being sold as a block to China, right? In other words, there are these so-called conservative organizations started or run by Council on Foreign Relations members trying to get the American people to promote the passage of the trade partnership in the Pacific, Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, as a block to the growth of China in the Asia sphere, Pacific sphere actually. And yet we see that the Australian Parliament is voting to have a free trade deal with China, and Australia will be part of the TPP. And we find 5 other countries in the TPP already have free trade deals with China. And yet, how can that be a block to China with the TPP when some of the members are already involved in free trade? In other words, if we're worried about something in relationship to China, China can just move through these other countries back and forth, and they're already also in a negotiation with the free trade area of Japan and Korea. And so gradually what we see is a circumvention of all these agreements that we supposedly are doing to block Russia, block China, and everything else. It's a very interesting study when you look at that. One last thing. A few months ago, just 3 months ago actually, the headline in the Wall Street Journal, Pakistan warms to Russia as U.S. ties chill. So Pakistan is warming to Russia. By the way, they already consider themselves close allies of China. Now, in this morning's Wall Street Journal, Afghans reach out to Russia. So they are getting closer and closer in all of these countries around the Pacific and Asian rim, from Russia to China on down through all these countries. It does not bode well for the future. I'm going to hold off on reading you the opening paragraph of this article until next week, because it is a real shocker. And for those of you who have not bought the paper yet, you can read it online. It is an interesting way of opening up an article and the words they use. Until next week, we'll see you then.